Resident Evil Zero was a brilliant idea for Capcom to dig deeper into the origin story of the original Resident Evil. This prequel released November 12, 2002, exclusive to the Nintendo GameCube. However, Resident Evil Zero began as a project to be released on the Nintendo 64 in 1998. Using a cartridge format for the game gave the development team some problems, with one of those problems being memory storage. Eventually, it got pushed back and was rebuilt for the Nintendo GameCube. I love that footage exists out there of what the Nintendo 64 version was to look like. Resident Evil Zero used the same mechanics as the 2002 remake of the first Resident Evil game, which I was a huge fan of. I usually don't mind prequels if they're done right, and I love where this one begins and where it ends. The STARS Bravo team is sent to investigate bizarre murders in the Arklay Mountains. The Bravo team's helicopter experiences engine failure and crashes into the forest. The Alpha team lost contact with them and was sent out to find them. So this is where the Alpha team gets chased into the mansion during the opening events of Resident Evil 1. After the crash, Rebecca Chambers, a Bravo team officer, is searching the area when she comes upon a train. She investigates only to find the passengers and crew are now infected zombies. She eventually runs into a newly introduced character named Billy Cohen. Billy is a former second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps and was wrongfully blamed for killing 23 people. Billy was to be executed, but the van transporting him crashed in the area and he escaped. I like the team of Rebecca and Billy throughout this game. I myself just wasn't a huge fan of controlling both characters all the time. It felt like a hassle. I would have preferred having different segments with them, similar to Jill and Carlos in Resident Evil 3, or even Leon and Ada in Resident Evil 2. But I get it. They wanted to try something new, and it wasn't horrible, but for me, it was always a pain having to worry about the health of two characters. It's kind of like you're babysitting them, you know? I just didn't want a consistent partner. I don't want to spend any more time on the story. I mostly want to talk about my thoughts of the gameplay itself. Controls? Loved them. Just like the Resident Evil 1 remake. Getting rid of the item boxes, though, that was a genius idea. In Resident Evil 0, if your inventory is full, no more running halfway across the map to drop off an item in the item box. You can simply drop whatever it is on the ground and come back for it later. With the game only giving you 6 inventory slots per character, you'll be dropping stuff off constantly. This should have been the way going forward. So convenient, drop anything, anywhere. I love the giant church bat, what a cool boss. It just needed better camera angles to help the player out and to show off the awesome looking bat. The worst thing you could ever come across in this game, though, is the humanoid leeches. Don't waste your ammo on these things, they seem indestructible. Just dodge them the best you can, and hope for the best. But there are some familiar enemies here, like the hunters and the giant spiders. You'll find plenty of ammo to deal with these guys, but every time I found healing items, I usually had to use them. I guess that's a sign for a good challenge. I do feel Resident Evil 0 was a good challenge, and this game, more than any other Resident Evil, makes you use your brain. Now I know puzzles are a staple in Resident Evil, but managing you and your partner's inventory, sharing health items / ammunition, and which weapon to keep and which to leave behind, it can be a bit stressful. You gotta use the brain. This isn't a Resident Evil title to just jump into for those who are new to the series. This is a challenge for those who are experienced and have fought their way through the mansion, RPD, and streets of Raccoon City. As I mentioned earlier, I enjoyed the team of Rebecca and Billy. There isn't a lot of dialogue between the two when you think about it. Instead, they work together strategically, and it feels like they're creating a bond as you play on. Many fans in the Resident Evil community wanted more from Billy, like a possible return in a future game. But I like where his story ends. A wrongfully blamed man is now free and goes his separate way to live his life after thanking Rebecca. The game ends with Billy and Rebecca overlooking the Spencer Mansion where the events of Resident Evil 1 are happening. Rebecca, as we know, in Resident Evil 1 shows up during Chris's story in the mansion, and her troubles are far from over. But they go their separate ways. Resident Evil 0 is a beautiful game, with a beautiful soundtrack. But unfortunately, I only find small parts of this game memorable. It has nothing to do with these characters. It's more so missing big events. Other than the bat and the final boss, the rest of the boss battles come off as bland. The reason I remember the final boss so well is because of the anxiety I feel trying to fight it while Rebecca slowly turns multiple valves to open the roof to kill the creature. You have to keep it away from her as well. It's definitely an underrated game. I wouldn't say it's up there with the best that Resident Evil has to offer, but for the diehards, the prequel story going straight into the first game, that's just awesome. Resident Evil 0 felt oddly enough new, but also familiar. In the end, I enjoyed my playthrough. The story is what stuck out to me the most. Seeing William Birkin, Wesker, and Rico in cutscenes uncovering more of the story that we all came to know and love, that was the best part for me.